From the Sunshine State, this is Tampa Bay's Tan Talk.
Welcome to Pull No Punches Radio, the radio show by the fighters for the fighters. Pull No Punches Radio is powered by Enlisted 9 Fight Company and is hosted by UFC lightweight and Ultimate Fighter Season 16 winner Colton Smith, the outspoken and controversial Jay Pagliaro, and Staff Sergeant Dan O'Brien. Now it is time for the one and only Pull No Punches Radio featuring Jay, Colton, and Dan.
I wish I knew then what I know right now. When my parents split, that's when it shook my ground. No source of strength now, my life was...
Good morning, Tampa Bay, and a happy holiday season to you. It is time for Pull No Punches Radio, powered by the Enlisted 9 Fight Company here on the Tan Talk Radio Network. We hope you all are having a happy holiday season so far and are ready to be locked down and listen live to the most action-packed hour in radio today. Pull No Punches Radio. Jay Pagliaro with you for this holiday season episode, final episode before the Christmas Day festivities. Anybody that wants to chime in, Mr. Bill behind the board will give you the number as he always does, but feel free to call in with your telephone calls regarding sports, MMA, and more. That's a number that you'll be hearing momentarily.
Call the show now, toll-free, 1-866-826-1340. That's 1-866-826-1340 or 727-441-3000. That's 727-441-3000.
That's the number you got to call, ladies and gentlemen. And here's what we're going to do. We're giving some stuff away today. We're going to give a gift away from the Enlisted 9 Fight Company. Maybe get you a shirt. We'll find out what Dan O'Brien's going to go out ahead and send to you guys. We'll get you a shirt sent out of some sorts or some kind of prize pack. I'm sure they'll put together something good. We're also going to give you an autographed Matt the Hammer Hamill photograph that's, again, authentically autographed. And there is a certificate of authenticity listed with it. Those are compliments of our friends at MMA Signatures. Be sure to check them out, MMAsignatures.com. So all you got to do is call in, participate in the show. We'll pick one lucky caller, and you'll be getting a nice prize pack for the holiday season to keep for yourself or maybe to give to your loved one, your favorite MMA fan / sports fan in your life. So simple as that. Just give the numbers a call, 727-441-3000 locally. So on the docket for today, we got some stuff in the MMA community to discuss. Obviously, first and foremost, last Saturday night, live on from Sacramento, California, UFC on Fox, a big night of fights. It was the first night in MMA and UFC history where there were no fighters above 170 pounds on the card. It was a showcase night for the smaller fellas, the smaller ladies and gentlemen, and we saw some dominant performances by two names that have in each in their own right, been a little bit maligned. Now, first and foremost, the main event of the evening, we saw a conclusion to the rivalry between Demetrius Johnson and Joseph Benavidez. What an impressive performance for the champion, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. Picks up a very impressive first-round knockout over his arch-rival, Benavidez. And let me tell you, Demetrius Johnson's a guy who it seems like every fight he's in, he gets better and better and better. He doesn't quite get the recognition as being one of the top 5 fighters in the sport, but I think he should, because this guy, just ever since losing to Dominic Cruz back in 2011, making a move down to the flyweight division, which was newly implemented because of gentlemen like him, he's been on a tear, unbeaten. He was tested by John Dodson, but otherwise he's just run through the division more and picking up, win after win after win. And he's finished his last 2 opponents in Benavidez, who's never been finished, and John Moraga, who also has never been finished. And let me tell you, 2 tough guys. Finished them both. I mean, and right now, I'm at the point where I'm wondering, is there a fighter out there that's going to be able, who matches up next? Who's next in line? Who can touch this guy? I mean, he's looked that good in his last 2 performances. Maybe we put him in there in a rematch with Dodson. I know there's a lot of people that want to see another fight with Ian McCall, Uncle Creepy. There's a couple of up-and-comers coming up the ranks, Ali Bagutnov, and who at this point with the flyweight division as it is, very well may be next in line. And then, this newcomer, Alpa Ocic, who picked up a big win also last week over tough and gritty Darren Uyama. So, I mean, there's question marks as to who's next in line. He's looked that good. He's looked that impressive. Dare I say, his last 2 fights, he's looked that dominant. So Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, a big winner, also victorious last Saturday night in Sacramento. A fighter who gains, he's respected, but he gains a lot of, perhaps shall I say, undue criticism. That being Uriah Faber picks up a first-round submission win over the tough 21-year-old Michael McDonald. It's been announced he's going to get the next title shot, the next shot at 135 pounds, to face either Dominic Cruz or Renan Barão. And that sort of got a lot of people up in arms because, again, Uriah Faber, not a guy who's shied at the title scene. He's got 2 title shots so far in the UFC, losing to both Dominic Cruz and Renan Barão. Going to get another shot. Simple fact, though, guys, this is the guy who he's making it difficult to not give him a title shot. He's making it very hard for, to not justify. I mean, all the guy does is win. Yeah, he's unbeaten. He's lost his 2 UFC losses were both in title fights. But how could you deny an opportunity when all he does is beat everybody that's put in front of him? And frankly, you look at the 135-pound division where I looked at a few names at 125. I can't really think of anybody more deserving than Faber at getting the next crack at Cruz or Barão. So, I mean, there's opportunities galore for Faber to really cash in. And let me tell you, this not the same fighter that fought Renan Barão, not the same fighter that fought Dominic Cruz the first time. And there's one key element, that's his new head coach, Wayne Bang Ludwig, who has just really not only made a splash with Faber's career, but the alpha male camp as a whole. I mean, now they're 28 wins since Ludwig took over as head coach. That's an impressive number under any circumstance. So those are the 2 big topics in MMA. Do you feel that Uriah Faber should get the next title shot at the Barão-Cruz winner? If not, who do you think should? And then, there's the discussion of, Demetrius Johnson. Who do you think's next in line for him? Also, obviously, the sad and tragic news out of the MMA community this week. I think we briefly brushed on it a little bit last week. The passing of Shane Del Rosario. Also, another huge passing in the MMA community. Bellator veteran Joe Camacho passes this week at the age of 41. Just a very, very sad week. And yesterday, the autopsy results were listed, and sadly, they found traces of a cocktail of drugs in Del Rosario's system. Could mean something, could mean nothing, but just a sad circumstance. And either which way, I mean, again, if Del Rosario's passing was drug related, and not yet knowing what the cause of Camacho's were, takes nothing away from the magnitude of their deaths. I mean, both gentlemen were huge influences on the combat sports community. Camacho made a big splash in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Del Rosario in the Muay Thai scene. Also, both were fought at the highest level in MMA, the UFC and Bellator. So, big losses that, again, you can't take anything away from. Meanwhile, switching gears to the sports community. Obviously, the bowl season gets started tonight. A flurry of games taking place on the schedule. Looking forward to that. Got the big ones coming up, though. You got the BCS coming up next week. You got the national title game coming up. Locally, Florida State, Auburn, big matchups going on there. But we'll talk a little bit about some of those bowl games, the ones I think, I'm going to lay these in order, and especially locally with the Central Florida Knights making their first BCS appearance. We'll talk about some of those BCS bowl games a little bit, some of the other bowl games to keep an eye on. Also, we're going to talk about one topic I want to kick off the program with here, talking about what's going on in Austin, Texas. Mac Brown, what a roller coaster circus that's been. A couple of weeks ago, there was rumors Nick Saban was all but a lock to take the job. Nick Saban says, nope, not so fast. So that sort of puts a little bit of egg on Texas's face. Mac Brown says, I'm going to fight for my job. I'm not going away. I want the opportunity to coach Texas Longhorn football. And literally a couple days later, he decides, I've had enough. He walks away, winds up retiring, get a nice front office job with the University of Texas, making $500,000 a year to work with the athletic department. But a big void in the college football landscape, because this is going to change one which way or the other. This is going to really impact college football as a whole. Texas, by and large, considered, if not the premier program in college football, due to both, the magnitude, the money, the Longhorn Network, the fertile recruiting grounds, the history, the prestige, are considered one of the top jobs in college football. It's not the top job. ESPN actually called them the top job in all of college football, ranked them number 2 overall behind the Green Bay Packers. So You see that. You see the fertile recruiting ground. Everybody wants to go to Texas anymore. The recruits aren't hard to come by. On top of things, you've got this boosters that are willing to pay up to $10 million a year for a head coach. So I mean, this is going to shake the landscape. This is definitely going to shake the landscape of college football. Who they hire, and you're literally hearing everybody from former Buccaneers head coach John Gruden to Jimbo Fisher of Florida State to Gus Malzahn to Jim Harbaugh. Anybody, you're hearing everybody and anybody as a possible candidate, and so it's going to be interesting to see who they wind up hiring. I'll give you a list of who I think they're going to wind up hiring, but I know this. I'm hearing even guys like James Franklin. Listen to me. Let's call a spade a spade. Texas forced Mac Brown out. Texas forced Mac Brown to the sidelines. He walked away. It wasn't voluntary. And all Mac Brown did at UT was win. Think about this, folks. Mac Brown slipped a little bit over the last couple of years. Standards of Texas football slipped since 2009, but they still won 30 games, 30-20 since 2009. That's not bad under any circumstances. They've missed one bowl game under Mac Brown. They've won one national title, and literally were perhaps a Colt McCoy injury away from winning another. This guy revitalized Texas football. He took over a program that really had become stagnant under previous coaches. I mean, from Darrell Royal, the late Darrell K. Royal, on up to John Mackovic, the program had slipped. I mean, Fred Akers, David McWilliams, Mackovic, they all had varying levels of success, but the oomph wasn't there. There was something missing in Austin. There was something missing in University of Texas football, and you had seen many games to where they'd gone out there and just gotten blitzkrieg. I mean, I reckon the 1991 Cotton Bowl, 46-3, where they were just, they were over before the game was over before they stepped foot on the field. They were thrown around, they were beaten, they were just completely crushed. 66-3, lost to UCLA back in '96. I mean, there just were some embarrassing losses, and the buster wasn't there. There were a spattering of 10, 11 win seasons and decent bowl games, followed up with some some mediocre 5-6 seasons. And what Mac Brown did is came into Austin and restarted the culture of expectation to where 8 wins isn't enough. 8 wins isn't enough. There were seasons under John Mackovic and David Akers as a Texas fan that I would have jumped for joy for 8 wins. And so, it is what it is. But we do have a phone call. Who do we got on the line, Joe? Dan hung up? Okay, so we got another co-host. So we got a guest on the line, Steve, giving us a call. Steve, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going there, guys? Love what
Good,
you guys
buddy.
are doing.
What's on your mind?
No, I noticed you're bouncing back and forth between subjects. You already did touch on the UFC on Fox a little bit there. I was wondering what were your thoughts on the whole Cody McKenzie situation. Had no banner, pretty much had no cornerman. I think his last fight he had the Team Rousey in his corner with Edmund and Manny. Do you have any insight on what possibly going on? Maybe he's doing a sponsor strike. Maybe he's having personal issues. What are your thoughts?
Well, so in terms of the personal issues, I'm not sure if you saw the ridiculous rumors that were being spread about McKenzie, and I'm still trying to get to the bottom of that.
Absolutely. I've seen that, and I actually think your show host, Jay, actually had a response from him, and he had something to say about that, too.
Yeah, this actually is Jay. This is Jay you're talking to. So, yeah, was he actually responded?
It's Steve, Jay.
No, but, individually, McKenzie point blank said, no, I absolutely would not ever hit a woman. And Cody's a unique individual. Cody is a very, shall I say, enthusiastic gentleman, for lack of a better term, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, he's truly one of the characters of MMA. You can go ahead and say that it was a bit of a sponsor strike because, what was going on with him was, it's a low ball. Sponsorship game in MMA is a low ball offer. There's so much, in a lot of cases, there's a lot of deceit. There's a lot of mistrust, so to speak, between the fighters and the sponsors. And because there's just so many horror stories, I'm sure you've heard plenty of them, of nonsense regarding, fighters getting shafted by sponsors. They're not paid. They're given bad checks. I'm not going to go full on record and say, I'll let Cody do it himself. I'm going to reach out to try to bring him on here next week. But I'm interested in seeing, what exactly happened. I'm thinking, no, he had a sponsorship package go bad. And I know Cody's also bounced between camps, too. So he's trying to find that right camp to sort of salvage his career a bit.
Yeah, he couldn't have picked the worst time to try to iron some things out if you're about to be on Fox national television and you really have no one in your corner, no sponsors. I mean, I'm sure everyone by now has seen the whole thing where referee rips the tags off of his basketball shorts and whatnot, and then Dana goes around bashing him about it. Hey, that's your fighter on national TV. That's something you should look out for. But instead of bashing the guy for it.
It's a tough too. The thing about McKenzie is this was, by all accounts and purposes, a must-win fight for him. I mean, he was 0-3 in his last 3 fights. So chances are in the UFC that doesn't lead to job stability nowadays. I mean, another loss, McKenzie probably. I don't want to discredit the guy, but I think his next fight's likely going to be outside of the UFC. As for Dana White bashing him, I mean, realistically speaking, and it's no knock on Dana. I mean, what he's done to help build the UFC up to what it is today, it should be recognized. It should be appreciated. But I'm just, maybe you need to take a look at the pay structure, that what they got going on with the sponsorships. Because, I mean, every sponsor has to pay $150,000 to the UFC. They have to pay a tax just for the right to sponsor a fighter. Now, mind you, that's $150,000 that goes right to the UFC before they pay one dime.
But that's a clothing apparel. I think
Dan's there.
There's someone I know where they don't have to pay that fee, but they're not a clothing apparel. Like, I think it's only for like that quote unquote clothing apparel or nutritional supplement sponsor, something like that. I don't think it falls under everybody. Like, you could put like a Sucker Punch Entertainment. I don't think that they would have to pay, $150,000 a year to sponsor one or multiple fighters because they're not like an apparel sponsor or a shoe. You get what I'm saying here? That's their management company,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Dan O'Brien, actually, my co-host here with us now, and he might have a little bit more insight than I do. Dan, Steve's on the line with us. We're talking a little bit about the pay structure of sponsorships. Now, I'm thinking, he says that he doesn't think they have to pay, that all companies have to pay that tax in order to get into the UFC. You've had a little bit of inner dealings with Enlisted 9 of trying to get them sponsored in the UFC with Colton. What's the structure like? Is there any accuracy to what's the structure like in terms of the tax? Does everybody have to pay it, or is it just the clothing apparel company?
I'd say there's variations of everything, and all negotiations are worked out. But yes, there is a tax for the majority of everything in there. Now, however, I will tell you, we bring into the octagon very often a lot of nonprofits. Now, nonprofit organizations such as let's just say like a Veteran Outdoors or something the military's using like the Mighty Oaks. Those are nonprofit organizations that do not come with a tax. Also, the gym that the person trains at, more often than not, will be able to go into the octagon without having to pay a tax. However, if you are a organization or a company, for the most part, you will pay some sort of tax to get into the octagon.
Gotcha. So, by and large, that may have been, in terms of at least the clothing-wise, why McKenzie was unable to, was basically wearing the Walmart basketball shorts that he probably bought on the way to the arena. Yeah, you saw that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that was. It's an interesting situation. I mean, like we were touching on before, like I just think that like even if you are on a sponsor strike and it arguably could be your last time fighting in the UFC if you lose, I think he's just sometimes you got to bite the bullet and then kind of take what you can get at that point, especially if it could very well possibly your last time where you could cash in on, some halfway decent money, even if the next time out, regardless of what promotion you're fighting on, if you're still in the UFC, if you're fighting in a regional promotion, World Series of Fighting belts or whatever, that's when you could say, okay, well, I'm going to put a stand here. not when it could very well be your last time to actually be able to cash in and do what you want to do here. And
Makes
that's
sense
not
to
saying
me.
that he doesn't have
Go
the
ahead, Dan.
right to do that. It's just saying, like I said, his choice to do it is kind of a weird time to do it. But it's his life, it's his career, it's his moral standards, and he's completely entitled to it.
Well, you saw Matt Danzig did the same thing too, correct? I mean, he had, if I'm not mistaken, on his shorts, he had for sale listed on it. He's another one that's on the verge of possibly being an ex-UFC fighter. So seems like there's a lot of, at least a couple that are taking a stance against the sponsors. I don't know if it's against the sponsors or if it's against the structure of pay that the sponsors give to them. I'm honestly not sure, but we've definitely seen at least a couple. I think you got War Machine, who's always fighting the good cause, for lack of a better term, against sponsors. So some interesting times as a fighter. Now, quick question for you, Steve. Talking about Uriah Faber earlier on, he's listed to get the next title shot as a Cruz Barao winner. What do you think about that? Are you in favor of him getting a title shot again, or you opposed to it?
I've actually gone on record a few times as saying I don't want to see him fight for a title again. But then you go look at his body of work over his last 3 or 4 fights, and go back look at the guys he beat, the caliber of guys he beat, the type of fights they were. How can you not give it to him at this point in time? It's almost to not even have him in that conversation is like almost a slap in the face to him. I mean, he's been very impressive his last 2-3 outings out there. He's stopping guys. It's not like he's just point fighting his way to decisions to get some W's on his records. He's going out there. He's doing his job, and I don't see how you cannot take it away from him. In all intents and purposes, the only way Uriah Faber puts that belt back around his waist again is if somehow Dominic Cruz manages to beat Renan Barão. That's the only way I see Uriah Faber ever putting gold around his waist again, if it comes through Dominic Cruz. I don't think that Uriah's skill set and game plan of how he goes about a fight can bring him to a victory over Renan Barão, but I do feel that he could still beat Dominic Cruz. I mean, that's just my personal take on it. He's arguably, one of the best ambassadors that we have in mixed martial arts right now. And yes, he's also very controversial. A lot of people love him, a lot of people hate him. But at this point in time, with what he's doing inside the cage, you can't deny him with that number 1 contender slot, that next guy in line. Name someone else in 135 pounds that's more deserving right now, and I'll entertain the suggestion. I look around and I can't see anyone else that's worthy of it right now.
I can't think of anybody, to be honest with you. I mean, I can't think of one fighter right now in the UFC who's more deserving than Faber. I mean, that's not the controversial. That may be the controversial answer for people who think he's maxed out his title shots. But listen, I mean, when it comes to deservingness, I'd rather see Faber get 10 title shots than somebody that's not deserving them. I mean, we've already seen, Steve, a fighter that Faber holds a victory over, Eddie Wineland, get a title shot before he got another one. So, I mean, Michael McDonald got a title shot, the guy he just beat. So, again, case in point, this explains the body of work, as you said, that Uriah Faber is doing. And to me, it merits no other consideration. The only other person I can think of that might deserve one is Frankie Edgar if he drops down. And realistically, I think it'd be blasphemous to give Frankie Edgar a title shot when he's never fought in the division before. Dan, what do you think? What do you think on this Saturday? And you think Faber should get a nice next shot at the Cruz Barao winner?
I think there's a very high chance that he's going to, just for so many things. I mean, the guy's resurrected his career over the last couple of years here. He's got Alpha Male going in the right direction, meaning with Ludwig out there. I think overall, Mariah's starting to learn how to beat other people at games that they're better at, So I think over the last 3 years, just like watching his last fight, it was an unbelievable performance, and I will tell you that, there is money involved, and I know Uriah sells fights, so if it was me, he would absolutely get the next shot.
I agree with that. I mean, I think that even with weight, even if he does fight, as you said, money aspect, even if he does wind up fighting, if he fights Cruz again, there's money to be had there. That's the final fight of that trilogy. If he fights Barao, it's a rematch. So there's these are sellable fights, which at the end of the day, UFC is a business first and foremost, and you're going to want to put somebody in there that's not only deserving, but somebody that's going to sell some tickets, sell some pay-per-view buys. And I think either which way, whether it's favor Cruz 3 or favor Barral 2, that there's going to be the interest of the MMA fan base, the MMA community.
Well, Barral, you also got to look at it. I mean, also, Uriah doesn't look the same as he looked, then, right now. And also, Uriah's got staying power. I mean, that kid could take a ton of abuse. And you saw that in some of his past fights. I mean, he just doesn't quit. I just think that he's brought more skills to the table now and has refined his game enough to where he can give him a decent fight. I truly believe that. And I know him personally. A lot of people, I think your guest there, Jay. Sorry, my phone and my battery broke, so I apologize for that. But the bottom line is, I think if you come to the table like Uriah did last time versus, and catch Barral, just slip it just a little bit, I think you got a more exciting fight than you might think.
How much do you think the value of Dwayne Ludwig has helped Uriah Faber's career? I mean, how much do you think that'll help him, especially in a possible rematch with Barral?
I think what we just saw the other night says it all, because, I mean, you're not just seeing him, you're seeing an entire camp just come alive, and the skill set and everything else. So now, I mean, Alpha Male's always been exciting, let's face it, but you start looking at what they're doing down there right now for the 155s and below. I mean, it's been very exciting for me to watch. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening. And I really believe that, because of Uriah's name and what he's done here lately, I think he gets a shot soon. I really do.
Yeah, I think it's been established. I think Dana White went out on record and said he's going to get the next shot. So, definitely interesting times to be had. Now, I know, Dan, we talk a lot about sports on here. We talk a lot about, college football. What about what's going on in Texas? I mean, that's some crazy, Mac Brown pushed to the side, so to speak. Leads me to believe one thing. Okay, now granted they're not getting Nick Saban, which was the $52 million rumor for the longest time. The other media outlets were reporting it was 99% done. Didn't happen. Saban staying at Alabama. Still, regardless, Texas forces Mac Brown out. And I know you insinuated one name on the Enlisted Nine Facebook page, and I'm only assuming that's referring to James Franklin of Vanderbilt, who, don't get me wrong, as a Texas fan, I would love James Franklin there. I think he's a star in the rise head coach. What he's done at Vanderbilt, a perennial doormat, has been nothing short of miraculous. I mean, and if he can win in Vanderbilt and recruit 4- and 5-star prospects there, the sky's the limit for what he does in Austin. My thought, though, they push Mac Brown to the sidelines. They're going for broke. They're going for high profile. And I'm not quite sure James Franklin fits that bill yet. Could he be the best possible fit for him? Absolutely. And as a Texas fan, I want to see, I want to see the best possible fit as head coach. I don't care if it's James Franklin. I don't care if it's, one high-profile name is King's team is former Buccaneers head coach John Gruden. I mean, to me, that's the kind of head coach they're looking at. I think it's going to be Gruden, which is a situation I'm not happy with. I think it's going to be somebody like him or, possibly Jimbo Fisher or Gus Malzahn. That's the type of candidates I think they're going after.
Well, I think Jimbo Fisher, I don't think that's even in the question myself after what they've been able to do there with all the drama 4 or 5 years ago with Florida State trying to, get Bobby Bowden and then him to get out of there, want him to get out of there, want him to get him back, into that job. Where they're at right now, I just don't see it happening. However, I wouldn't take it off the table. It wouldn't surprise me. But if it's Gruden, like you were saying, is it possible? I don't know. I haven't really been able to get any definitive information. But I just thought the Vandy coach, after what the initial talks were with who was available, who wasn't available, it made some kind of sense. But I also believe, Jay, you've been watching the Longhorns for a long time. I think Texas has an image. Sometimes I think the image gets in front of the issues that are at hand about playing football. I think they want the big name to go with the big football team So it would not surprise me if they tried to get an NFL coach. It would not surprise me if they tried to go after some of the biggest names that are already tied into contracts and try to out offer them or whatever. But the bottom line, I think sometimes the ego of the University of Texas gets in their way, and I think it hinders their program.
Well, in terms of, just think of this for a second, okay? You talk about the ego of the University of Texas. As a Texas fan, they just pushed the maybe the second best head coach that school's ever had to the sidelines because they felt he wasn't doing enough. Mind you, this is a guy who's averaged 8-9 wins a season over the last 4 years. Since 2009, he won a national title. He darn near won a second one. He took a program that was stagnant in '97 and rebuilt the image of what Texas football should be. Really, Mac Brown's the victim of his own success in Austin. They pushed him to the side. It just means their expectations are sky high for what they want. 8 wins isn't enough. 9 wins isn't enough. They want BCSs. They want national titles. They want them every year. That is ego. Absolutely. That is high ego. And like you said, about Franklin, I mean, listen, I'm not against that idea myself. If they hire James Franklin, I'm perfectly fine with that. I just don't think the university and the majority of the fans hold the same sentiment. As a matter of fact, I've been gouging interest on, various message boards and Facebook forums asking what people think of James Franklin. They're not buying it. They're not having it, and I mean, me personally, you ask me, Dan, would I rather have James Franklin or John Gruden? I'd rather have James Franklin 100 times. John Gruden's coach never recruited on a college trail. He hasn't coached in the college game since the 1990s, early 1990s. We're talking 23 years, okay, since he's been a college coach. And that was as a wide receiver coach at the University of Pacific. He hasn't coached, period, in 5 years. He's been in an ESPN broadcast booth. And quite frankly, and I don't know if Tampa fans may agree with me, they may disagree with me, realistically, after winning the Super Bowl his second year, or his first year there with Tony Dungy's guys, they had a couple of good years, but by and large, his run in Tampa, minus the Super Bowl, was pretty mediocre. So, I mean, I'm not sold on the Gruden hype. I'm really not. I mean, I could be crazy for saying that, Dan. I could be.
No, I don't think you're crazy, because even Gruden got lucky when he won that Super Bowl, because if you got to remember, Donovan McNabb choked his way to letting them into that Super Bowl for them to win it. And then just so happens to be, we're playing the Raiders, who John coached for the better part of 2 or 3 seasons there, so he knew if I remember correctly, when they were doing the game planning and the practice for that, he was playing quarterback. He was playing the Raiders quarterback because that's how well he knew it. He just fell into the perfect situation. He's not a great coach. He's a good motivator. He's a good guy to rally behind. But as far as being on a college level, it won't ever work for him. He'll have to have literally the best coaches around him to be successful on the college level. I agree.
And we're talking people that have been in the college game quite a long time that know how to hit the recruiting trail. Yeah, Texas is one of those schools. There are a number of schools where they go in and they have the automatic advantage just for being who they are, but the tides have changed. You got Texas going in there, you got Baylor going in there now, you got Oklahoma, you got, Oklahoma State. Right now at TCU, I'd say there's, in a recruiting base, are all on the same playing field. So it's not what it was 6-7 years ago, really. The times have changed, and I'm just not sure John Gruden, with his outdated approach, is going to be able to walk into hey, I'm John Gruden, I won a Super Bowl and I'm on ESPN. That means, that doesn't mean anything, because right now you got, Art Briles walking into the same living room saying, hey, I just put Robert Griffin III to the pros, and I took a Baylor program. You have a chance to carve your own legacy here. I mean, I've been in the line for saying that I don't want Gruden. I don't want Gruden in Austin. I can think of other candidates. If we're aiming high, I want Jim Harbaugh. That's who I want. But
well, Jay, you both bring up great points. And the big thing about it is, I mean, whether John Gruden goes to Texas, he's larger than life, let's be honest. So Texas might be thinking that, because Texas hasn't done this now, let's just be honest. So they haven't gone after a former NFL Super Bowl coach, an ESPN guy. So are we moving in the direction of recruiting or taking the possibility that we could send a famous person into the living rooms of our 16, 17, 18-year-old kids and convince them to come back to the University of Texas. Me personally, popularity has never brought me wins in my life. So I would not go that route. But some people have that feeling or that opinion that if I hire John Gruden and I bring him to the University of Texas, automatically my stadium is full. Automatically my recruiting class gets built. All of a sudden in Austin, Texas, we have a Super Bowl champion coach that can compete with the last two Heisman trophies and whatever else that we didn't get our hands on at Texas A&M and Baylor. What are your opinions? That is my opinion on it. Right or wrong, I think Texas has the money to do it, and I think they would do it to accomplish the mission I just spoke of.
I mean, it's hard to tell. I think that I wonder even, too, where Texas stands because, you know, like I said, I'll throw the names out there. Right now, Gruden is the one who said, I'm interested. I'm possibly. Has Texas come on record yet and said that the interest is mutual? I'm not sure. I mean, I've heard nothing. They may have. But to me, though, I'm just wondering, I'm thinking if they're aiming even higher than that. I mean, if, you know, same question. Another name that's been linked to the job is, you know, both Harbaugh brothers, Jim and John. They could get the same thing with either of them. You know what I mean? They could get the same thing with either of them than, you know, they could with Gruden. I mean, again, I'm not anti-Gruden. If he's the coach, I'm not going to be one of these fans. Oh, I'm done with the team. I'm not doing, you know, I'm not doing that third grade crap. But I just think this is a vital hire, Stephen Dan, because, you know, again, this is the first time they've had to hire a head coach since '97, and this is the guy who you mentioned that the firestorm Jimbo Fisher had to walk into at Florida State. Whereas Matt Brown didn't have anywhere near the prestige that Bobby Bowden did, you know, or whereas Bowden, you know, was a larger-than-life legend, Brown had a good amount of success in Austin. So whoever's going to be replacing him, even recent history, whereas the Longhorns may have slipped by their standards, whoever follows them is going to have a tough act ahead of them. And, I mean, we've seen the last time the Longhorns, I mean, when Darrell K. Royal was retired, for lack of a better term, the messes they went through to get to this point, you know, before Matt Brown took over, where they swung and really missed 3 times. They did it with another former head coach, John Mackovic, and the NFL head coach, John Mackovic. And, I mean, I just think that right now there's a precarious position where the wrong head coach, a miss at the head coaching hire could set them back even further, even in their own state with A&M and Baylor.
Right. Well, I'll make a bold prediction. I'll tell you that whoever takes the Texas job, based off the recruiting classes I've done my research on, I'm going to tell you we don't see nothing good for the next 2 to 3 years anyway. So he might not even be able to last, in my personal opinion.
You very well might not. I mean, again,
think about the recruiting class. Look at the stars they got coming. I mean, you know, they're not doing as well as they did. So this isn't just going to happen overnight. The people in Austin need to understand that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, think about it. They pushed the national. They pushed it. Where would you rank Matt Brown in terms of the head coach, best head coach at the UT? I'd rank him second or third behind Royal and David Dana Bible. I mean, one of the best coaches the school's ever had. And there were a lot of people that wanted him out. There were a lot of people that wanted him out. And it's not just within. I'm talking the fan base that, you know, really we're done with Mac. You know, I'm not going to be doing the season ticket, you know, all that nonsense. So I'll just put it this way. My thoughts is unless the new head coach at worst, whether it's John Gruden, James Franklin, Jim Mora, Jim Harbaugh, Vince Lombardi's ghost, whoever the head coach is there, they better make it to at least the BCS next year in order to keep the fans quiet. Otherwise, you know, if they do 8-4 again, you never know. You never know what's going to happen. I'm not saying they're going to be in danger of losing their job, but the seat will get very warm very quickly.
Can you look at that division, though? Can you see them doing a BCS title run next year with the team that they have right now? I don't know.
Well, to be honest with you, had they beaten Baylor, they would have made it this year, even last year. I mean, they were right in the catbird seat to make a BCS each of the last 2 seasons, and they lost late games. So, I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's very possible, but realistic, I don't know. I
look at it as decisive victories, though. I don't know that from week to week they can keep it going. And don't get me wrong, I love watching Texas football regardless. but I just don't know that they have the team or the coaching staff at this time to win on a weekly basis and maintain that, pace like other teams have been able to do.
I mean, and the pace of the coaches. I mean, and watching Texas this year, they had that nice run after they fired Manny Diaz, and I'm not trying to defend them. I'm just playing a devil's advocate here. They had that really nice run after they fired Manny Diaz as defensive coordinator, where I think they started 0-2 and then wound up going 7-0 in their next 7 games, and they just absolutely. I mean, they blasted Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry, but then they choked down the stretch. I mean, simple as that. They choked in a game that they needed to win, and now they're playing in the Alamo Bowl. It's just, to me, it's a matter of coaching. I think the talent's there. I mean, I think Jonathan Gray is a very good halfback. I think he's a guy who could, end up putting up 1,500 yards next year. Quarterback situation, you got 2 pretty good ones in David Ash and Tyrone Swopes, who, right coach, right situation. I mean, my point is, I think the talent's there right now to where they could win pretty quick and make a BCS. It's just a matter of the coach and the staff. I mean, coaches, to be honest, the head coach is one facet of the college game, of any game, but college especially. You could hire any of the 3 of us as head coach. If we have a killer recruiting class or a killer staff, we're going to win. So, I mean, that's the thing to pay attention to as well, is what kind of staff is the head coach going to bring with him.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a great analysis, but that's why you're the best at this, and we'll just see where it goes. I hope that it gets tougher down there. I hope that the conference gets better, and I think Texas as a state will actually reap the benefit of that.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of locally here in Florida, in the Central Florida area, you got the Knights playing in the BCS next week. I'll talk a little bit about some of the bowl games that are on the docket. They actually start today. And I'm not saying this to play the local angle here, but Central Florida, speaking of Baylor, a lot of teams really ruling them out in this Fiesta Bowl matchup with Baylor. This is a good team, though. This is a much better team than I think people are giving them credit for, Dan. I mean, this is an 11-1 squad at Central Florida. Their only loss was by 3 to South Carolina, which that's, not exactly a bad loss. They had several quality wins. They beat Penn State in Happy Valley. They beat Louisville in a game where Ted Bridgewater, who's likely going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft, I mean, he had an 85% completion percentage, threw for over 300 yards. So, I mean, this team's very capable of hanging with anybody in the nation when they're on their game. And, I mean, again, I think a lot of people saying Baylor's going to roll them. I've heard, 20-point favorite, 30-point. Central Florida's too good for that. They're too well coached. And they've got a good quarterback in their own right. They wind up being picked in the top 5 to the draft. So, I mean, I think on a local angle, a lot of people ruling the Central Florida Knights out. I'm not saying they're going to win because I'm taking Baylor, but I think it's going to be a much more competitive game than people give credit for.
I would go out on a record. I will honestly tell you that I think that game is maybe a 3 to 6 point game. I think it's going to be more exciting than you think. And I think the Knights are just coming around. I think they get better every week. And like you said, they had their little mishap there with Louisville, but if you think about it, they made some mistakes in that game too. So they could have very well won that game. And that program is solid. And I'm kind of partial to it because I got some friends that graduated from there. My niece goes there now. But that program out of nowhere has resurrected itself, and I think they're players.
I mean, it's led by their head coach, Resurrection, George O'Leary. I mean, you want to talk about resurrection. This is a guy who, I think if nothing else, he's going into this bowl game with something to prove. So we all remember the George O'Leary story, Dan. He was the head coach of Notre Dame for a handful of days. Had a great run at Georgia Tech, head coach of Notre Dame for a handful of days. Sadly lost his job because of some inaccuracies on his resume. I mean, he's done nice, though. He's landed back on his feet. He's got a Central Florida team built up and in the BCS. Big win over a top 10 team this year. Only loss was to a top 10 team that they could, like you mentioned, Dan, in South Carolina, they could have beaten with a couple of fixed, mistakes that were made. But, I mean, this is, I'm with you. I think this is going to be a much better game than people give credit for. I think, you're looking at the 3 to 6 point ratio. And I think that even if they go in there and lose and they make it a competitive game against a team that the nation seems to think is going to roll them. I mean, I think this is a telling game for the school as a whole. I think if they go in there and they make it a competitive one, it's gonna change the culture of Central Florida to where they may wind up being a player. I mean, let's be honest, the AAU, or formerly the Big East, they're pretty wide open. I mean, they're pretty wide open. They get that automatic bid every year if they finish in the top 16. Louisville's leaving. I mean, this could be a case to where this may not be the first time you see the UCF Knights playing in January football.
Oh, yeah. What does that do for recruiting in Florida, too? Again, we talk about this all the time. You get a team like in there like the USF Bulls were doing there for a little while out there in Tampa. You have a couple good years and a couple good runs. Your team can stay pretty good for about 5 to 8 years, even if you make mistakes out there with your decision-making and recruiting. So these kids out there in Central Florida, they love this coach, and they're going to play extremely hard for him. And like we talked about before, it's that loyalty that these kids develop. And they don't want to lose. They obviously want to play for him. So look what it's done. Obviously, this guy had an awesome resume, like you just said. So I'll tell you, Florida football is getting strong. Miami's coming back around. Now look at Florida State. Obviously, Florida fell off a little bit, but I don't think that they're as far off as we might think either. I mean, you got a powerhouse going on in that state, just like Texas right now. So this becomes a very, very important game, in my opinion, when it comes to seeing if we're taking kids out of the state of Texas to bring to Florida, or kids out of Florida are going to move to Texas, like you've seen in the past over the years. But I think when you've watched the high school football games, when, South Lake Carroll plays Northwestern or whoever on ESPN, I think what you have is you have like a state rivalry almost between the state of Florida and the state of Texas. I've seen it develop over the last 20 years, and I think it's back again now.
Which is, the two best, to me, you throw those two states in Ohio, maybe Pennsylvania into the mix. Those are two of the best states in terms of talent in football. And, you're just every year you're seeing elite level talent come out of both states, and it's when you mentioned Florida, UF, listen, they weren't far removed from being a top dog. They did, even though they struggled this year and they may have slipped a bit, they did win 11 games and go to the BCS last year. They were a bounce or two away from playing for the national title. So it's not far-fetched to think that they can bounce back very quickly. It's not that what's to say they're not back in the BCS next year. It's not out the realm of possibility. Case in point, you look at what Florida State's done. Where was Florida State at the end of Bobby Bowden's run? And listen, I'm a big Bobby Bowden fan. He's one of the classiest men in college football. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time. They were stagnant. Florida State was basically where Texas is now. They were 8-4, 9-3. Good, not up to Florida State standards. They pushed them out, and Jimbo Fisher. Last 2 years, he's been at the BCS, and now they're 40 minutes away from a national title. They have a Heisman Trophy winner in Winston. It's really, in that state especially, it's a quick fix because there's so much talent there that it's really, they're not a far bounce away from, the Gators aren't a far bounce away or a good recruiting class away from being a top 3 team again.
Right. And I think Bridgewater, the reason he left the state of Florida, I think he was he was down there in Northwestern, I'm almost 100% sure, when he played against South Lake Carroll, I believe. But the thing about it, I think the reason he left is he wanted to start as a freshman. So probably at that time, they weren't able to pull that off in any of the schools in the state of Florida. That's why he left. But the majority of the talent, I call it the horseshoe, and I'm not talking about Ohio State Stadium here. I'm talking about the horseshoe from the bottom of Miami that goes all the way down to the south of Texas there. That is predominantly all Texas and Florida talent, all the way through the SEC, all the way down there. So it's a recruiting war, and I think that a lot of those kids, when they have the opportunity to stay in their states, and those teams are getting better, I see that little horseshoe ring is going to be the powerhouse for the next 10, 15 years because of all the teams that have emerged over here over the last 5, 10 years.
Agreed. As for the Bridgewater situation, if you recall, he actually was committed to Miami. He was going to stay close to home, and he wind up out of his obligations to the U because of the firing of Randy Shannon. So he was actually supposed to stay in state, and wind up going elsewhere, which was certainly Louisville's game. That was certainly a good thing for you, Louisville, that he did, and they wind up rebuilding their fortunes as a result of his decision to go elsewhere. But a couple of minutes left on the program, Dan. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the bowl schedules. What bowls are on tap for today? I know there's I know Colorado State's playing, I believe Washington State. There's some other bowls going on today, though, correct?
There are. There's some games out there today. I'll be honest with you, I've been more worried in my company right now and the UFC cards coming up. So I haven't really paid much attention to it at all, but I'm sure there's always something good that we can tune on to after our show. So I'm looking forward to that. So I don't know anything else that really comes to my mind as far as the names of the bowls. But yeah, they're not huge big teams playing today.
Well, that being said, we'll wrap up the program real quick, though. You had a big sale going on this week, $14.98 for a mystery design. Now, you got to off the record here. Okay, maybe not, but it's off the record. Mysterious design. Is it a new design, a previously released design? I mean, what are we expecting here for those that are ordering this shirt or that have ordered this shirt?
Well, what we did, Jay, is we put it at $14.09. The reason was the fan requested it for the to start the new year. 14 with E9, so we made it $14.09. What it is a shirt that I had made, didn't want to release because it had a really unique color to it, and we wanted to bring something to the fans for the fighters and for the people that follow us that just, times are tough. So we wanted to reach out and do something for the fans that none of our, wholesalers or anything would have a hard time with, or get upset about the pricing of it. So we didn't release the design for business purposes. And so at the same time, though, we could take out the need, take care of the needy, as well as our soldiers that aren't doing so well and our wounded warriors. So the whole idea of the shirt was to offer them a chance to get a $40 to $50 quality shirt for $14. And it was our way of moving into the new year to try to just give back a little bit for the success we've had in the great
1 minute.
Gotcha. Well, that being said, we'll wrap up today's program. Got a minute left in the show. Be sure to check out our website, www.enlisted9.com. Also, check us out on Facebook, Enlisted 9 Fight Company, and at Enlisted 9 on Twitter. Dan, any final comments for today's show?
Hey, I just want to thank you, Jay, for covering me there for a minute. Had some technical difficulties this morning, but, hey, you being the talent that you are, I'm sure everything went well, and we'll talk after the show, and I greatly appreciate our guest also. Thank you all very much, and let's have a great holiday season to everybody out there.
Absolutely. With that being said, we'll wrap up today's show. For Dan O'Brien, my co-host, and for Mr. Bill behind the board, I am Dave Pagliaro. This has been Pull No Punches Radio, powered by the Enlisted 9 Fight Company. Merry Christmas to you, Tampa Bay. We'll talk to you next week.
Wish I knew then what I know right now. When my parents fled, that's when it shook my ground. No source of strength now.
WTAN, Clearwater, Tampa Bay. WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay. WZHR, Zephyr Hills, Tampa Bay. Listen.
It's time for the Saturday edition of Canada Calling, the news from home for vacationing Canadians throughout Florida. This is Prior Smith speaking from Toronto. Thanks for joining us. If you're keeping score at home, yesterday was a messy day of wet snow, rain, and freezing rain across much of eastern Canada. Another storm system will move in tonight, and tomorrow, they say, will be even worse. And all this is unfolding on the busiest travel weekend of the year.